This conference will now be recorded.
Is anyone here to test them out? Nope.
Is Patricia online or no?
No.
No, that would be the true test.
Or me, because I was whining so much the last time. Good morning, and I'll skip number 1, Chairman's comments, because I think we've had plenty of comments about current events. Move right into the approval of the July 8th Audit and Finance Committee minutes, which you received earlier. Anybody have any questions, comments, or changes to those minutes, or can I get a motion?
I will make that motion.
I will second the motion.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, payment of bills. You have attached in the packet the quiet expenses that were paid. If you look through those individual bills, I don't think you'll see anything that's not pretty typical. Yes, which is 20. And then on the back of that, you'll also see the quiet deposits, which basically are rental payments and a loan payment paid back to us by one of our borrowers.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you.
Hey, how can you hear us okay?
Perfectly. I don't know what you've
Nice.
done, but it's great. And I can also see all the usual suspects.
All right.
Good.
Megan and Joe took care of the speakers. Good stuff.
Well, the key is, can I hear Jody?
Well,
We haven't tested that. We're about
So we
to.
got to try that one out.
That was a cue for you to say something, Joe.
Where are you located?
Face the.
Where are you located?
I'm at my office.
Okay, see, that's all your problem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see Patricia.
Can you pass the other one?
At some point, I wanted to
I'm in
bring
the
up,
cyberspace. That's where I am.
I'll bring that up later. I think it might be worth touching on briefly.
Okay, so any questions, comments on the bills or deposits?
No question.
Okay, let's move on to the financials. Jody or Megan?
did you read those?
We need them?
The bill?
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Motion?
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Carries. I'm going to move into the financial statements. Any specific changes, modifications that we need to talk about, Jody?
Not really. The biggest hit this July was really, I think, just some of our utility costs have increased a little bit on mowing. But otherwise, it's pretty standard. You still have to voucher the county with their funds. That was about another $67,000. We still have the transfer from the CRC to the IDA, another $38,000.
Patricia, are you hearing this?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, she is.
I am.
And
Great.
then we have to do a voucher for ESD for the $150,000 for the rail yards. And my understanding is that today we're closing on, and that's why Joe is not here. We're closing on the Corning project, so we should receive a wire transfer for another $150,000.
Okay, good.
That is not reflected in here because it's not happening.
It is, however, reflecting the projections.
Can I ask a question? The 2020, it's a 2020 revised budget. Is that just 2020 actual? So we've got 21 adopted and 21 projections in year to date, but the 2020 revised, that's just 2020 actual.
That was the final budget.
That was.
But do we have actual for 2020?
Yeah,
To me, that would seem to be more appropriate to be able to compare where we actually
I can-
landed in 2020.
I can put that in.
Oh, that's an audit in 2020. No.
I think it's still just a budget. I mean,
Yeah,
it would make more sense to drop that actual line in there rather than.
Okay.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yeah. So you can
Okay.
see what we actually brought in.
It is what we're seeing. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other items, we do have some new and unfinished business.
the biggest thing is that we finally have, I think, reached agreement with the authority's budget office on changes to the Paris system. As you may recall, when we submitted the Paris reports this year in March, we put a qualification on the certification that we were still negotiating with the authority's budget office to make changes because we found some errors in the being reported. So with that, I want to kind of review it because the board is actually going to have to vote on this at the board.
End of the month.
Yeah.
Make sure we do it.
So basically on this sheet, there's a couple of things that are misleading. The first yellow box for the Bassett Hospital shows $60,550,000. The Bank of New York Mellon Trust Company said that the initial drawdown was $47,966,000, and Paris is, the ABO was saying that, well, that's what this number should be dropped down to. I responded to them and said, we don't want to change that number because while they may have done an initial drawdown of 47 million, by the end of the year, they had drawn down the full 60,550,000. So that actually is the real number. It's what shows up in our audits. And that's where they said, well, you certified these. I'm like, whatever.
So they're questioning the audit figure?
They're questioning what I've inputted, what the audit put in, and what the banks are saying.
Great.
So after a discussion with the authority budget office, they said, well, don't really worry about those old numbers because they're so far back that we're not going to change them. It's just going to complicate things. What they're asking right now is only the current balances. So if you look at the last column on the sheet, it has Hartwick College, 36,210,000. That's what our audit shows as well, and that's what we reported in the past. The change on is the next one for Bassett Hospital is 59. And again, that's what the audit shows. The next one is Springbrook at 19,265,388. And again, that's what the audit shows as well. Springbrook at 1,747,156 is what our audit shows. The next one is Springbrook 500,000. This is one that I've talked to Mary about, and she's going to have to add this because she does not show these numbers because they've never done a drawdown. It's been what was appropriated on the bond issue, so she didn't include it because they haven't done a drawdown. So
Mary Manzanero you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next one, 5,151,000. Again, that's what our audit shows. The next one is 4,450,000, again for the Templeton Foundation.
No, that was great.
Right.
I'm sorry, and that one doesn't show up as well because they haven't done a drawdown in our audit. So Mary's going to add these two to our audit. And the last one is Templeton Foundation at 12 million, which is what our audit shows. The big difference is what this in the last three columns is a yellow box that says 52,178,539. There are two screens when you input the information on the audits. One is directly asking each bond issuer how much debt was retired in the past year. So for Springbrook, I'll do a number, an entry. For Templeton, I'll do an entry. For Bassett, I'll do an entry. There's another screen that has the cumulative total of the debt drawn. Now, I assumed, which was a mistake, that when you input the individual ones, it automatically retallies in the total spreadsheet. It doesn't. You have to manually go in and add up all the changes you've done to various individual ones and input that into the separate screen for the reconciliation. So that's why there's a difference, because I didn't change that number. I just thought it automatically did that. So they will change that number to the correct number.
Which is the 52 or the 59?
It'll go to 59,375.
So that will now be an agreement between the bank, the auditors.
So those are really the changes. There really aren't really a major issue. The two that we pointed out to them back in March was actually Springbrook and Hartwick. Those are the two that show up on the analysis that really requires any type of change. So does anybody have any questions on that? I know it's kind of hard to digest all at once, especially when you're looking at spreadsheets that really don't make a lot of sense unless you have the backup.
As long as all three agree,
Yeah,
that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any reason to go back and try to figure out what happened from 18 to 20. Because what you're saying and describing, it doesn't make sense if you're going backward and then trying to come forward and reconcile. It doesn't make sense. What you're ultimately ending up with is all three of those numbers being in balance and being correct.
right.
Which is, I think, where we want to be.
So
I agree.
the other spreadsheet that you can review really quickly. Is again, the first one is on Springbrook. We have on our screen, and according to Citizens Bank, the initial drawdown for the bonds issued debt was 25,200. For some reason, Mary picked up 25,195. She can't figure out why she changed that, because in an audit 4 or 5 years ago, she had 25,200,000. So she's going to change that number.
25 too.
Yeah. Okay. Hartwick College.
Looks like a transposition.
This refers back to the other sheet where there's a minor discrepancy of $5,000. And then the Bassett Hospital again is in 60,550,000. In which case the Bank of Mellon said, no, it should start, we started at 47 million. But
So you're saying that the total of the drawdowns over time was 60?
yes,
It just wasn't at this time.
right.
So the
So-
39,858 is going to be corrected.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So that reconciles all the way from 8 years ago. I mean,
So just so I can understand, on the bottom of this oblong sheet here, the discrepancy ends up being $54 million? That's the adjustment?
Yeah.
That's noticeable.
And again, that's what really prompted me to talk to him about it. I said, we don't have this much debt. I don't know where that original 192 million came from. And that's when we started doing this analysis, is that while they were reported on one screen, they weren't being reported on the other screen, and all that debt should be taken off.
So moving forward, we're
Moving forward will
balanced.
be simple.
Yeah, we're balanced.
Now we have everything straightened out between our auditor, our office, and the ABO. You know,
Do you get some form of communication from them that acknowledges that you're in balance and that everything's straight now?
Yeah, that'd be important.
they sent these sheets to us and said, this is our reconciliation. Do you agree with this? And I reviewed them all. I talked to Mary twice this week, and we agree with the numbers. So
But is there no clean bill of health rule and message communication?
they don't even tell me who's reviewing it.
Well, my concern is it seems like the controller's office is on a hobby horse. I news this morning, once he BOCES is getting written up for not keeping track of their debt. I mean, fire departments, cut down courts. I mean, it just seems like the state's having a good time, and we're had something to show we've got our crap together. It seems like we've got official. if it's available.
Well, what I'll do is I'll print off all the emails and put them in this file with this.
Or when you finish and say, yes, we agree to this, would you please acknowledge that we're all in agreement?
Yeah, so just somewhere to put a period at the end of it, we're done. You know, we've got a tight ship, it's really important.
Yeah, now the authority's budget office and the state controller's office don't like each other.
Naturally.
And the controller's office wants the authority to take over the authority budget office functions on reviewing.
Well, if we can avoid being the person in the middle, that's always good.
So we'll actually vote on this at our board meeting to say we agree with the analysis that was done. But it's taken now almost 4 months to get the reconciliation. And I will say they've been pretty good up until a point.
No, I'm just saying, in all fairness, they're charged with getting their, you know, making things right, so they're just doing their job, right?
So going back to Jeff's suggestion, is there a chance that we could have that confirmation from them
Yeah,
before we vote at the end of the month?
I did an email today when we talked to the finance committee. It's going to go before the full board in 2 weeks. Where you send a confirmation that we're agreeing with these numbers as well.
Great, that'll be good.
What's this has nothing to do with this particular conversation, but what's this overall information? Is this something that, you know, we as a board should review on an annual basis? I mean, because this is the most we've ever looked at this. I'm just asking the question.
I think that would ease my mind because right now I'm on the hook.
Right. Yeah. I'm just,
But what we can do is before we submit the Paris reports, it's always been a hassle in the sense that Mary does a lot of tax returns for private clients. And so getting the audit complete before March 31st sometimes is tough. And when we do get them, it's usually like the week before, and then we just vote on it. We try to get it to the board, and we just vote on it. This year, we voted on it, and I put a provision in there that we weren't. There's a section under the certification for additional comments, and I wrote in a bunch of additional comments for what was out of sync on the numbers. So while technically we have to certify them because otherwise we get written up for not submitting the report, we hadn't been able to come to an agreement on the numbers yet. But going forward, it should be a lot more easier. What we're going to do at the ABO's request is actually contact each of the banks involved with these bond issues once a year and ask for their summary of what was reduced, what debt was paid off, as opposed to going to Bassett and going to Templeton and going to Hartwick and asking what their numbers were, because sometimes they're not the same with what the banks indicate.
Yeah, 'cause I guess my only thought is like you can show me numbers and we can look at them, but I'm not gonna be able to refute them or discuss them without understanding all the pieces of the puzzle, right? So
We'll provide that to you.
Well, I suspect that if we'd have started in the beginning and looked at this, the basic difference was you thought it was total commitment. They want total outstanding balance. And we wouldn't have known.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
But
we would,
this
like,
was
I
the
mean,
problem.
it's really not that the numbers are bad, it's that the numbers were misunderstood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know that reviewing it would help me other than making sure that you're doing this reconciliation across the 3 different numbers, if you will, to make sure we're all in sync there.
The good news going forward, we have corrected figures. Everybody's in agreement. I would just note that school districts put up budgets that are voted on in May, and the external audit of that previous year's expenditures and revenues is not concluded normally and presented and voted on until September following. It's just the way things go, you know, and so I get it.
New kind of question. What is our role? Why do these bonds come through us? Or where does our oversight fall into that process? Because I know that's not money that the idea of the county has.
Oh, that's standard.
Since we're the issuer of the bonds, we have to, and we're a quasi-governmental agency, we have to report to the authority's budget office directly of how much of those bonds have been paid.
Who we issued these. Maybe just,
The
maybe
bond.
that just hasn't happened since I've been here.
I'm sorry.
I think, were you
Can't
on,
issue bonds anymore, can
wasn't Josh here when we did the Bassett, the Templeton?
No.
No?
I don't think
Yeah,
it's
join that.
2018.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that.
All right, so
Wasn't
this
that
is something that you guys,
seems like a,
2018.
yeah, I guess you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
For
Seems like it was not that long ago.
Yeah.
Yikes, what happened?
most of the bonds that we issue, we can issue tax exempt bonds for non-for-profits through the, and actually we'll have to have a board of directors meeting in 2 weeks of the Capital Resource Corporation, because the IDA didn't issue those bonds. It's actually the.
Yes, because they don't, we normally do it for the CRC.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the Capital Resource Corporation issues tax exempt bonds for non-for-profits. That's why it's for Springbrook, the hospital, Templeton Foundation, Hartwick. In the case of the IDA can issue tax exempt bonds, but they can only issue them for manufacturing companies. There are very few manufacturing companies that want to take out tax exempt bonds because the interest rates are not really that attractive. So the IDA technically really, I don't think we have any else. But there may be one bond,
St. James
yeah,
Manor?
maybe.
No.
I don't
They're a
know.
nonprofit, yeah.
We've ever done one for the IDAs.
So most of
Who
them
knows?
are not.
I haven't been on the board.
okay, that is helpful.
So you haven't been involved in approving any of these.
There's all this been going on.
We'll get you on the hook.
I
one
would
way or
remember
another.
this thing, you know.
Next on the list is have a request.
Robert Hickey.
Yeah.
Robert Hickey is in the process of trying to build additional ball fields in just outside of Cooperstown.
Which direction?
Cooperstown Fun Park.
Okay,
He's
okay.
built, he wants to build them at the fun park.
Oh, really? Okay.
This is separate from the Dreams Park.
He's worked some type of an arrangement with the Baseball Hall of Fame to have a referral system between them. He did submit a CFA application. I think it's right now about I think it's about, I don't know what the numbers are. I think it's about $3.5 million, $4 million project. He's looking to build softball fields for girls and baseball fields for young boys.
Younger than what the Dreams Park accommodates?
Yeah, I think so.
That's Little League age.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, they're,
I think it's the U13, I think.
It's
but
like
He's a 13-year-old in there.
So anyway, he submitted a CFA application. I met with him a couple of times to review what he had to fill out. This and that. We sent a support letter in. The IDA supports this project. He's now looking at asking for a small cities application, a community development grant application. And it would qualify, even though it's a seasonal use. I've talked to small cities about another project, Ride the Rails or something like that, that was only seasonal. They said, yeah, if you can, they certainly would qualify. I went through all the forms and the pages where he should go to do the application, and he met with me on Monday and asked if we would assist writing the grant application for him, because it's much too confusing for him. The ESD grant was a lot easier. And I said, well, it's a little premature because right now you need to get bank financing involved, and until you have your bank financing lined up, once you submit a pre-application under community development and they approve that, you have 60 days to submit the full application. So if you don't have your bank commitments lined up, you won't make that data. And he says, well, I'm willing to pay you to do this. And he said,
Is there a grant writer we can recommend?
that was my thought, because I said, well, listen, I can give you the names of a couple of grant just for this. But I did say I would bring it up at the meeting today.
We don't usually write grants for people, do we?
Well, we've written the grants for custom electronics, we've written the grant for Cooperstown Distillery,
Manufacturing.
which are manufacturing. We're looking at possibly doing one with Inox's manufacturing. The problem is that we've taken on a lot of.
Can I cut to the quick?
Yeah.
Your answers are right. Go get bank financing and refer them to someone who can help them with it's writing the bond. or the
Agreed.
grant.
I mean, I just think
Agreed.
limited resource, limited
Because
time.
you don't want to be another 6 or 8 months, 10 months down the road of helping write a grant and find out you don't even have a project.
Yeah, that's fine. And these.
And I'm not saying you don't. I don't know the underpinnings of
When
this.
we did custom electronics grant applications, this thick, I mean, these are serious applications because unlike Empire State Development's applications are fairly simple. They're like 20 pages long.
Right.
Answer the questions, and they have no commitment until your project is 100% built.
Right.
Then they will reimburse you. Small cities will give you the money as you need it or as you go. So they want all these answers answered in detail.
Was there not a softball complex proposal up around Route 20?
It's not, we're still sitting there.
Close to 80, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's called
Yeah.
Cooperstown Diamonds or something like that.
Yeah, it's
And how many
just
fields is he talking
barren.
about? Just out of curiosity. That's not a lot of money for building fields.
I don't think it's not that big of a complex.
Little League fields are similar in.
He might be able to.
Yeah,
get
so
3
your
fields
dimensions
out of
could
that,
pretty
right?
much be
I
exactly,
think
your
it's
mound
3
would
to
be
5
different.
fields, not a lot.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
not that many.
I think
Yeah,
we're
I
on
don't-
board with Jeff's suggestion.
I don't
Yeah, I
think
mean, the first, obviously the bank, I mean, like, that's kind of a non-starter in the conversation. But
Yeah.
if you
So,
don't have-
and then the last one I'll refer to Megan, since she was instrumental in arranging these, but we just want to just new speakers.
Hopefully everyone can hear us.
Yeah, can you hear everything?
Yes, we can.
Great.
Excellent.
Hey, sound perfect.
Thank you for taking care of that. It is difficult to hear. Yes.
Yeah.
So we need to know if we can vote from home at the end.
Well, that I just wanted to raise very quickly. I was sharing with Dave earlier that I'm on the Cornell Cooperative Extension Board. They sent around an email last night and they said that, I'm just reading from it, New York has adopted new protocols for hybrid public meetings, Zoom plus in-person, since the executive order exempting organizations from the open meetings law has expired. And they're going to explain it. I have a board meeting tonight, but according to them, you can join the meeting by Zoom because otherwise, CC, we could not. We couldn't vote unless we were there or if we were in a publicly accessible space and it was just like the county, we could do it. It would have to be announced, it would have to be accessible to the public. But basically, the major change for conducting hybrid meetings is the requirement that we list all remote sites where the meeting can be viewed, i.e. your residence or other location being viewed from. And that, I just wondered if we could check into the applicability of that for IDA.
Clarification from Joe as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I think I was saying earlier, we were talking about case counts here in the county and throughout the region, and it's better to be prepared. I think CCE, we're looking at, we're a 2-county board. I think we're looking at going back to virtual, I'm assuming soon.
So at the end of the day, let's assume you clarify and yes, you can do that. We would probably just want to list, right? Say, Jeff Lord, where are all the sites that I could be dialing in from?
Right.
Here, or here. Because, right, some people could have a home office, some people could have their other business office.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, if we
It's
just
like really
proactively.
one-face meeting where everyone's coming, just so silly. Like, look, here's how you find me.
Ought to be on your board, right? The end of the month.
Well,
This is a hologram.
Yeah.
if this is an option, it would just be worth checking out to see if we are going back that direction where we are maybe not coming back all, our choice, but
probably have to provide GPS locations. Is that true or not?
Can the public show up to any of those locations?
I don't think so. That's the whole thing about the
Well, they
hybrid.
got your address. They
Well,
can't.
that's the
I mean,
thing. You're gonna discuss it.
I don't think it's not saying you have to, it has to be publicly accessible. It's more that you have to promote, publicize where you're taking that meeting from. So that's a clarification I'm looking for.
That is so
So,
rude.
Totally.
well, unless there's another executive order suspending open meeting law.
Which executive?
Well,
Moving on.
yes, we have a couple weeks before.
Fire up the shredders. Let's go.
All right, we adjourned out of the
We're
finance.
adjourned. We're
All
done.
right.
Killed them.
Make that motion.
All right, so we'll roll into project committee. We'll forego the comments, approval for the July 8th meeting minutes.
So moved.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, project trackers. Jody, Richfield,
Sure, let's go into Richfield.
was first in the packet.
What we have done is we have submitted a request to EDA to actually look at hiring a consultant to administer this grant. EDA actually approved, after one review, our request to submit a request for proposals to consulting firms. And if it's okay with the board, we're just going to start advertising this.
Yeah, I think we discussed that last time, didn't we? Approved that. Yeah.
So we've got to advertise it for 30 days for EDA. And we won't get the action taken until then, but we're soliciting them and actually identifying companies that can provide.
We're looking for them to manage construction or manage the project.
Basically manage it. I had no idea how much paperwork it is with EDA. It's unbelievable. And even the administrator said, the EDA administrator says, yeah, that's all we do is paper.
So this is this advertising just a general advertising or is there a specific, like, request for proposal that goes to specific providers?
Yeah, it'll be that.
And your list is driven by people we've used in the past, other IDAs have used?
What I've been doing is I've been looking online for the types of companies that can provide those services that do administration of EDA grants. We'll send them direct notices and then we'll advertise. And once we put it online on our webpage, it's amazing how many consultants pick up. I don't know why they looked at RFPs or proposals, but
They do that because that's how they get
And
paid.
it's so much money.
And they got a program that makes it easy to find them, so it's the system working.
I've reached out to some of the firms, like the MRB group. They were going to look and see if they could get me a list of similar firms that would do that.
So I just have a couple questions on this one. First, just understanding where the town or village is at with their role in there. They were voting on, and honestly, I'm drawing a blank in terms of the role that they're playing and what they were stepping into. They were going through some approval process.
The water sewer piece.
Yeah. So are we all aligned there and they're ready in their role?
Or in the financing, is there any update on that? Should we even ask?
I know, I like it.
I hesitate to ask. Is that why we were looking for a project manager?
I thought, let me just throw something. We were going to move forward.
Regardless, yeah, we agree.
Water lines.
Yep. So the financing piece is not a huge,
It will be at the end, but at the moment.
in terms of sale of the property.
There's part of the budget that we submitted actually included hiring consultants to administer some of this. EDA initially said, oh, you can do this yourself. It's not that. And it's just, how much paperwork there is associated with this. And so they agreed that, well, you can go out and hire somebody. There's money in your budget.
But the component that Cheryl's asking about was for us, we were going to move forward regardless of the financing in that project, but
No, but for the
Town
village
and
board,
village.
town and
We
village.
still
being
need the town
prepared
and
for their
village,
role,
right?
because then they're gonna be running it, right? are they ready? Have they made all the approval they needed at their board level
And
to move forward?
No,
No,
village and
Town and village.
water and sewer.
Richfield,
with water and sewer, right now, there is an agreement between most of the town board members and all of the village board members to come to an agreement. So they've drafted a agreement that put a lot of the burden back on the IDA. So we referred it to our attorney, Kurt, who's reviewing it right now, and he said, I'm not going to agree to certain things. And the village, and he was going to talk to the village attorney and try to see if we can come to an agreement.
I think we should, I don't know, we should be aware of what they're trying to have us be responsible for, what the debate is, I guess.
Okay.
We should know what that is.
Right.
I think once Joe's done his stuff, right, like let him do the first cursory.
Is it Joe or Kurt? Did you say?
Oh, sorry, Kurt.
I believe it's Kurt, right? That's
Yeah,
it.
Kurt.
Okay, so have him do what he, and then give us that, so we understand the recommendation.
And some of us might be able to call some people who live or work in Ridgefield to kind of help nudge things so we get an agreement. I mean, I think everybody wants to do it. They're just trying to figure out what they can compromise on so they can get it done.
Well, and I think there's some like less responsibility, the better, right?
What happened was that the village mayor and the trustees agreed that they would take ownership of the lines and maintain them in the future. The village attorney said they can't do that because they're in the town. And the town doesn't want anything to do with anything. So they want the IDA to maintain it, own and maintain it. I said, that's not going to happen.
Here,
Right,
we,
so that, like, to me, this is a critical, like, we need to figure this out before we, I mean, you can do the 30-day RFP, but like, if we don't have this nailed down, I mean, we're not gonna be the owners of the water.
Let me ask you a really simple question. Significant portion of the town of Oneonta uses Oneonta city water and sewer, correct?
Right.
Who maintains those lines?
The village.
The city.
well, so we created water.
I don't understand what the town.
And so
Anyway, let's let Kurt work that out. Yeah.
Well, if you can get what you can get without any accountability.
once again, if we get a water district here, we can do it up there.
Sure.
Town handled by that.
I checked with the town supervisor on those lines, and he said the purpose.
I get billed for water from the city and pay the city for the water, and I'm in town.
I think that this might be a situation where having a professional firm, the consultant firm running this project would be helpful.
Absolutely.
In both dealing with the village and the town, quite frankly.
Except are you going to engage a professional firm on a project where you don't have the stakeholders in agreement?
Right.
You got to get stakeholders buy-in.
But I
At
think
least
it's
agreement-
helpful to get the-
agreement in place.
Yes.
30 days ago, we couldn't meet in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being done on videos, and it really wasn't productive. I mean, the last two meetings that we've had, they've done in person, and they've actually made some headway.
Well, there was a discussion at one point about whether or not the village or the town is capable of being the construction management of this project. And so you hire a firm that takes another one of these issues right off the table.
But the biggest development is an actual agreement. I mean, this happened with Midtel too. I mean, Midtel pushed all the maintenance of all that equipment off on the IDA. I mean, it's just kind of, you have to go back and forth, I assume. I mean, but at least you have a starting point.
It's a negotiation, like everything else.
Yep.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
supposedly going to resolve it by September.
Great.
That's what everybody agreed to.
And then just another quick question, I know, I mean, so here's that, and because I feel like we've been hearing the story for several months in terms of the bank financing from Mandela. I know it's separate and it has nothing to do with the water sewer. But in terms of, at this point, if she was waiting essentially for that dual kind of commitment from us to her, for her to us to go to the bank, is that what that last comment or note is about, is she's taking that letter to the bank? Like, so that she gives us kind of an informal commitment based on our informal commitment.
I've actually talked to Brett about this from EDA, and I said, listen, because you wanted us to reaffirm that we have a commitment.
Right, so we have two, right, the bank wants commitment from us and our grant wants commitment from Mandela. So where are we?
And I explained to him that I don't think she's gonna. I said, what happens if she doesn't go ahead with this? And he's like, well, has she told you that? I know. I said, she hasn't said that. He goes, well, then All we know is that we've gotten a letter from both of her companies saying she was proceeding with this, and we expect that she's not on it. And I said, but what if she doesn't?
Mhm.
And he's like, well, we'll cross that bridge when it happens. I'm like,
We'll burn that bridge and get there.
so,
I live in that world. That's perfectly fine.
and I gave her this,
You can't know everything.
and I gave Andela this proposal to purchase the properties 2 months ago.
So to summarize the answer to Cheryl's question,
No.
we are in the same place we were 3 months ago.
She,
Well,
6 years ago, 10 years ago.
beginning of the year.
Okay, so devil's advocate here. We don't have an industrial park for everybody to move into that's ready to function.
Right.
We're not holding all the cards. So I don't understand.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why I agreed to move ahead. with
Yeah,
the
that's
partnership,
what I'm
yeah.
saying. So what she said is, that's on the periphery.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand where we are with that, right, in terms of,
And P.S., if I were her, I'm not knocking myself over to make bank commitments on interest rates going to be effective 2 years from now that I don't know what's going to cost me to build it into an industrial park. It's not done.
well, for me, it's interesting in terms of her posture. I think the last board meeting, she was very committed to Richfield, but she had just shut down the Utica office. I believe, or was in the midst of shutting down the Utica office. So my only back concern is can she wait, right? Like, is she
Well,
going to be able to
and
wait?
she's making temporary plans to enlarge part of her building where she is right now, back to Felix Place. But
Okay.
she says that it's not optimal. She still wants to build
Okay.
the industrial park. And I said, well, you sat on this thing for 2 months now. It's not committal. It basically says you have 3 outs.
So the technical precise explanation for this is that we will cross that bridge when we get there. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
everybody's.
So in other words, if the government says we'll move forward and worry about that then, what things to worry about today, they need to worry about today.
Get the water and sewer.
Yeah, let's get our part done.
So the other big thing on this is I did go down to Binghamton and meet with Keystone Associates. I met with Mark Parker, who's one of the engineers on it. I told him we need 5 things from his firm to finish this up. One is that EDA says, well, we want the construction documents that he gave us, point out where all of the EDA regulations are. So we're working on that. I asked them to detail what type of right-of-way approvals we need, and let's lock those up. And really to finish up the construction documents for bid purposes, and get it out to bid.
Yeah.
So they're working on those right now.
Great.
So that's with that. On the rail yards, there really hasn't been too much movement. I did meet with Al and his group out of Connecticut. I know Al is really on hold on this hemp project. The problem is that we met with, for example, 2 people from Hartford regarding the green center and whether they could do the testing on the hemp for them. They said, well, we really only test products that are related to baking. And this guy from Connecticut is like, well, we can make cupcakes here. I'm like, are you kidding?
Have we settled the issue of energy needs?
No,
Well, it's fundamental.
it is one.
So to me, if we don't, let's get the foundation built first.
I thought we had some type of understanding on the ability to provide necessary electricity. Is that not correct?
That we can't.
Actually, I didn't put that in here. I apologize. I did talk to New York State Electric and Gas. They are supposed to give me a proposal to upgrade the line into the Tony River. And they said right now they're a little bit in the swamp because of all the work they had to do with all the storms. Lines that were down, but they were going to work on it.
But I thought they didn't have the power at the transformer. That upgrading the line will get us more power to holding out. I thought it was available from the source, we didn't have it. So upgrading the line into the park isn't going to get us the
They're
electricity.
going to upgrade the transformer.
Yeah, but they didn't have it coming to the transformer from the main line was what I thought they said. They needed another main line into Oneonta to increase voltage. That's what was my understanding from the last time we met with them. But that an upgrade would help us, but it wouldn't give us all we need. So I just don't want to do that and then find out when we get all done, we still lack. I would look for specifications of how much can we draw off this if you do this.
I think that's the important information, is when this is all said and done, if we know
Is it adequate?
what kind of draw we have available at the site, because that's what businesses, that many companies I think to publish.
Right, yeah.
They're
As we're
indicating
trying whatever, move the
that
draw.
there is going to be sufficient electricity with transformer line upgrades. That's pretty much what they're saying.
That's what they're indicating, but I'll confirm that.
Yeah, that's inconsistent with what they've said in previous conversations.
This goes way back, and I don't know, Jeff, you'll remember, Joe had done spec sheets on all our properties that had kind of all of the different assets at the property. I'm just wondering if that's an opportunity to do that here again, to be very clear on what the assets are. And then also understanding as we're looking at people review, like, is that not enough? Like, so you're seeing how much draw you have at the sites. He did that for the business park. I think he did it for the rail yards. Do you remember that, Jeff?
Yeah, I remember him doing an inventory.
If you get it,
Yeah.
it's probably in the library.
My conversation was with Al, such that propane can be used as a substitute for natural gas also.
It comes to a cost-effective issue.
Well, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
Discussion.
That's what,
But I think, I guess for me, taking a step back, is if we understood kind of the draw, the spec sheets of each of the folks on the rail yards here, is then sitting back and saying, okay, what businesses would be able to function here or not? And if the other ones that we're looking to attract, what do they need? We can start having, I think, more direct conversations around, okay, these are the solutions we need to go after or not, right? Is the investment worth it for the hopes of drawing? I mean, I don't know how committed they are either, right? So it's kind of like an envelope, like, right? We spend this money to do
Once
these
again,
things.
but if we don't know what we have to offer,
Correct.
it limits.
Yeah.
And yes, if it's only this much and they need that times two,
Yeah.
we need to talk to somebody else.
To me, that should be very clear.
I tried to discuss that with Mr. Rubin, that like this.
And what do they need? What do we have?
You can't do this deliberate. It doesn't make, all you do is chatting.
we can
Yes.
definitely upgrade the spec sheets for both the only on rail yards and the business park, because we do know from NYSEG how much power we have available.
Yeah, I think that would be critical,
Yeah.
given the
We can certainly,
the scarcity of energy moving forward, we need to know.
but I will confirm with NYSEG as well. I'll know the contract that. Is it just the upgrade of the transformer, or do we really need to upgrade it?
I thought when we met here with the president, CEO, and all that other stuff, it would give us something, but they needed to run a higher capacity line into Oneonta. They didn't have enough coming here, so let's find out for sure what's true.
And can we understand from the company, point, what are their needs? Like, what's their utilization
You have
need?
to define some of the information. The
Yeah.
word got vague.
Just a new plant.
What's that?
This is a new business. They don't have,
It's the hemp.
no, but they don't have a
Yeah.
business somewhere else they're operating that they can give you the
Yeah,
template.
but they would know what they might all order for whatever they're doing and know what.
No, right, I understand.
They were, they
And it might make a
initially said
difference
that
what
they
they
were
order,
requirements, but we haven't received them.
Gotta know your resources, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So the other thing on the rail yards is we did unofficially, we're not supposed to publicize it. We received notice that NYSERDA is funding a feasibility study for a community heat pump system around the Oneonta rail yards.
That's a ground source system, correct?
We wrote it into the grant. I knew Cheryl was gonna yell at me. That the grant is actually going to the Rambo engineers as opposed to our office. And they will be doing all the paperwork and actually all the engineering. So it takes us.
We called it community, what? Community what?
Community heat pump system.
So this is a geothermal heat pump to produce electricity? What is it to do?
Heat.
Heat?
It does, so what it is, so the ground source heat pump is like a huge series. They do it either with wells, like super deep wells, or you can do lateral fields. And what it does is it essentially, heat pumps are just moving energy, and so there's air source heat pumps, the ground source heat pumps. They've looked into, cities and municipalities have looked into doing community loop fields, which you have one huge shared loop field.
I just, my fog is
What's
what
the-
the
what's the-
process,
what's the
how do you
goal?
get it to the user? I mean, how does the,
So they all have a huge shared loop field. It's all underground, and you have two lines that come into the building, and they would hook into the heat pump, which would then provide the space cooling.
so this is would be a community heat pump source for the rail yards?
For the rail yards.
Gotcha,
Or any
okay.
industry-
It's not for the community, it's just for the rail yards. Got it.
There's a separate one that was
Like-
approved
yeah.
for the downtown. They were.
Does this become a utility? Who owns it when we're not?
I would think that it would somehow be like when you, if there's parcels that are being sold inside the rail yard, they would all have access to it.
Okay, but is there any, there's no maintenance forever? There's gotta be some.
No, the maintenance is on the unit, heat exchange units
That's
inside
right.
the facilities.
Okay.
The pipes in the ground, even Megan will be long gone before there's an issue with pipes in the ground, because they are pretty much immune to any kind of issues. But there is an issue as, okay, who installs that? Either the wells or the deep or the loop.
Yeah, right.
Somebody must own those, obviously.
Yeah, unless one get paid
Yeah,
for it.
that's the question. I
Where
don't
does that
know.
all-
That's why we have a company working on this, that they can answer those questions. This is an expense. Geothermal heat, there's a significant upfront cost to this that far exceeds standard heating units, but there is a long-term savings. That's the difference.
So
Right.
big buildings,
The
big
reason,
buildings, the savings come really quick. Yeah.
the reason we actually thought about and did apply for this is that in theory, NYSERDA is supposed to select the best projects for funding of the implementations.
Right.
So as an enticement to the rail yard to build your factory here, basically long-term, low-cost heat.
And
Probably not excessive.
And
heat,
cooling.
And cooling,
Yeah.
yeah, but not boiling, not manufacturing to use it for the manufacturing process. Right, heating and cooling facility.
Yeah.
For office.
And you have the space there that wouldn't be developable anyway, right? That's the
Right.
idea, that there's a lot of unusable space with the rail yards that you could use for that.
Don't disturb anything while you're doing
Geothermal.
Yeah, I mean, the firm that's doing
Can't touch
this
the
will make a
wetlands.
recommendation.
Can you drill a well in the wetlands?
They're gonna make a recommendation whether vertical wells are the way to go or whether a loop system is the way to go. That's
Let
way.
me say, the aquifer we're living on top of, there's limitless amounts of water.
Yeah, it's not really, it's not really.
I don't know,
an
that's,
aquifer
I
issue.
guess, I don't know what
Can you
the
do it well?
I don't know.
No, I mean,
I don't think, it's, I guess our
Legally and practically.
consultant will let us know, I guess.
We'll be rich. We'll be gold.
In theory, you can, because the wetlands is basically not coming up from the ground, it's being,
It's runoff, right?
it's runoff. So in theory, you can put a pipe in and the
How deep are those wells?
I think most of the major,
Usually,
How many?
a few hundred feet. It's all about the length of the field, and so,
Yeah.
they're probably usually around 400 feet deep.
What was water table come into it? I mean,
no, not at all.
Not
There's
at all.
leaves and everything.
Probably
It's all about,
field system.
no, but access to water table, as in, if you could drill 400 feet in Arizona, it probably won't get much thermal.
I'll give you a good example. The geothermal system at Oswego Ready Mix
Mhm.
is an open system. It pulls water out of the aquifer and to either extract heat, primarily it extracts heat for the concrete process that they're using over there. Most systems, like the major systems that have been installed at universities are closed systems. They don't draw water out of the ground. So they obviously circulate huge amounts of water, which is the other issue that we were talking about before, is that this is going to require some significant electricity to move all this water. Again, that's another issue that we're dealing with NICE, you know what I mean? But it may be, and they're 400 plus foot. There's a 399 or something is the limit that you can go down. Don't ask me to explain why there's a certain, but it's about a volume of water to create the kind of BTUs you need, et cetera. But most of the university systems did vertical wells simply because they're already there and they don't want excavators coming in, tearing up, a quarter of the campus to
Yeah.
put loop systems. And so, but that's why you have consultants and engineers.
But the real yards, you have a bit of property.
Absolutely.
Parking lots and
Yeah.
things like that, and so.
Yeah, the loop itself might be the
I
way.
think Barnes did a series of wells up on the college, John Hall.
They've done a lot of costs for a lot of, they drill the wells and other firms installed, the heat exchange, et cetera. Anyway,
So I might just say, like, obviously I can pull this information, but does the team kind of want more of a presentation on just what the geothermal is, what it's doing for us, what the plan is for the rail yards? I don't know if we have that information yet, but
no,
we don't have.
I guess for me,
that's what the feed to the engineering.
yeah, for things that, I'm not much impressed by things that sound nice or make me curious. Long term, is this going to give us an advantage on utility cost or something to?
Well, I guess that's what I'm looking for.
What's the
right?
long-term benefit to
Here's
the
what it does,
IDA?
here's what we'll give you,
Yeah.
right? This is the output we'll give you, these are the savings.
That's what the engineering firm is gonna tell us.
We're in competition with every other site in the
Right.
country. What is our ACE, we have low cost heating and cooling or whatever it is. What's the benefit to market?
And what are the subject tos?
Correct.
Right,
If you can't do it because we don't have power, what are we
but
talking
yeah, I mean, like,
about? I mean,
chicken and egg.
It's a lot.
chicken and the egg, you gotta figure it out, and then you gotta say to the rest of the world, okay, we can do it subject to these, can you provide this, can you do this,
Yeah,
can you do this?
Exactly, that's what I'm getting at, like, how
Get
do
it all
we get the ducks
on
in
a
a
piece of
row?
paper, let's check them off one at a time.
We'll wait for the
So we'll let NYSERDA provide the money for the engineering firm to answer all those questions.
There you go. Answer everyone.
Everyone.
All right, so director's report, I don't know if there's anything you want to highlight there, Jody, or any particular questions anyone has on any of the items listed.
We are gonna go through a Monterey inspection on custom electronics. I believe we sent everybody copies.
Yeah, that
of
was ridiculous, by
what the documents they want.
the way. Yeah,
I thought it would be helpful to understand every community development application, that's the type of documentation we have to maintain. I don't think a lot of people. We have an entire filing cabinet, basically, of all the documents. That's why I don't like to dig on too many.
I can appreciate.
County Micro Enterprise, Megan, just got awarded the last business at the,
Trobach Farms in Otego at the last.
so hopefully. we'll
Last funding?
finish up that
The last
process in
amount, yeah,
December.
about 19,000. And we've closed out 6 of the businesses already. So there's 2 left.
We are closing today with Corning, so we should receive a check for about $147,000 from them, wire transfer. We also are preparing this is our first, at the request of the county, this is the first time we're actually sending out tax bills. So we're sending a tax bill to Corning, probably early next week for another $88,000. Could be for all the tax jurisdictions. We have received I got a phone call a couple of days ago from a representative of Next Year, and I looked them up. They're the world's largest producer of solar and wind power in the United States. They're actually, I think it was formerly known as the Florida Gas and Electric.
Say that again?
I think they were originally named the Florida Gas and Electric, but they're now the world's largest producer of solar and wind power. They're planning on building a 200 megawatt solar facility in the town of Springfield in our county and goes into Herkimer County. It would be on 200 acres. I talked to our counterpart in Herkimer County. He sent me their pilot agreements for solar projects. And based on that, on a 200 megawatt facility, the increased taxes under the pilot would be about $1 million. So it would be significant. And we're just waiting for details from them. They said they would get back to us on it.
Just for clarity for everybody, the Corning solar field or whatever we want to call it is, I think, a little bit less than 1 megawatt. I'm not.
Yeah, it's like 650.65, maybe,
And the investment was,
1.1 million.
so take that 1.1 million and multiply it by 200. And it probably isn't a perfect analogy, but we're talking tens of millions, tens and tens of millions of dollars. Put this facility in.
And I've looked up the company, this is within their realm of, this is the type of stuff they build. I'm just amazed that they're building it in New York.
Well, we don't have details on where this power goes either.
No.
Yeah, whether, the original proposal.
It's going to go into the freeway to New York City, that's what they'll.
Well, that's not really true of the Hartford proposal, but
Well, maybe Harvard, but the commercial ones are where they can tap into the Marcy South.
yeah, I mean, we have two
downstream.
We have two 10-acre solar farms in the town of Lawrence right now. But the proposal of West Lawrence was entirely fed into Marcy South. It'll be interesting to see what the proposals. The other thing that's interesting always about these is whether or not they have any storage capacity built into this project. It's not viable, quite frankly. However, it'll be interesting to see.
The other thing, things might change with the change in the executive office with the fast track aspect and taking local interaction away from major projects. So we'll see how that divide goes.
Most people are completely unaware of what happened.
Yeah.
Under the previous administration in 2 weeks, that they really took local input, really reduced local input.
Any other questions on the director's report?
I just wondered about the housing pilot. Is that related to the current approved Cooperstown project? Is that something that,
No,
not related?
it's not related. I met with one of the trustees and he was looking at a piece of property and the biggest question I have is what is the state historic preservation office going to say? Because if they were to do it on this property, they'd have to tear down the building. And everybody knows all of Cooperstown's in a historic district, so it becomes a question whether they're going to have a bit about it or not.
Is this the Railroad Avenue proposal?
No, that's what I was just asking. So, which, I mean, I think would be totally game for our pilot request, right? The parameters we talked about, 10, are we looking at finalizing kind of that 10 units plus or something along those lines?
I'll do an analysis of it with our existing the policy we adopted the last board meeting.
Okay. On that subject, nice segue. A couple weeks ago, I sat in a workforce development webinar, Zoom meeting, I guess it was, looking at with a bunch of business people all over the region and talking about the reality. The consensus was there's probably 1,000 jobs open within 50 miles of me that we can't fill. I mean, I could hire 10 or 12 people tomorrow. I could find. My point being economic development. Okay, it's easy math, right? That's $40 million in payroll. At 40,000 a piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
This multiplier is 2 or 3 or 4, say it's 2.5, that turns into $100 million in payroll will be spent in our communities, most of which will be taxable. So what's 4% of 100 million that the county gets at their sales tax rate?
4 million?
4 million, okay? And that's the perennials in your garden. You harvest that every year because as long as they have their jobs, they go. So doing something to enable people to build housing for those 1,000 people who don't currently live here. If we can't find people to come to work, I guess we talk about training and everything else, but there's a percentage of the population that's not going to be trainable, or whether it's intellectual or values and whatever it is, they don't fit. So moving to top of the funnel, finding more people is part of it. The other thing is finding housing for them. And the community should want the housing because you spend your money where you live. Like, for instance, Giovanni, they truck people to Giovanni from Utica all the time. They make the money in Giovanni, and they take it and spend it in Mohawk Valley. You know, Giovanni's got the expense of the plant, and they got the taxes there. But the bonus is to where people live. And so, to me, anything we can do in the housing aspect to increase our population, it's going down, going the wrong way. Our projections aren't good unless we change that. But the overall benefit to the community, that's how we fund everything, is payroll dollars. So whatever we can do for people, for housing, and continue to grow and staff the opportunities that are, the 1,000 open jobs, we don't have to build a plant, extend sewer, water, get high-speed internet. The job's already here, we just have to find people. So, you know, this all becomes a bigger challenge of where, you know, like spiral down and we pull up for us to crash.
I agree with you. And I went through a recent evaluation of my performance. One of the areas for improvement is to, where are we going? And what's the board, what the role of the board is? We really got to find that. And I started thinking about that last couple of days, and I said, you know, our county is stationary. If you look at the county board, we have a county social service agency, we have a county highway department, we have the county whatever. And nobody's looking for the future. It's all looking at providing services to basic services.
Maintenance.
And there isn't anybody at the forefront of saying, where are we taking this county and how are we going to make it better for our residents? And I think that really becomes our role. And 3 years ago, when I came here, I would have said that the county is not. I think the county is in agreement to let us take that role, where before they probably weren't in that mindset. Because even as you point out on the housing issue, at the administration committee meeting that I went to, I did a recent presentation last month, they were applauding us for getting involved in housing. That was kind of surprising to hear. So I started looking at how are we going to take the lead in this, and one of them is going to be, I'm going to have to get out there and work with more of the groups. Now, last year was kind of a waste because of COVID-19. There wasn't any meetings, but I developed really quickly. And if you look at all the if you look at goal number 2, it does say support sustainable development with housing, because I think that we aren't focusing on housing. We really haven't. I'm going to ask some of the committee members, the board members like Josh, who's got expertise in housing, to help me with this, and to meet with other housing developers and say, what do we need to do? How do we move this stuff?
Well, it's also what Springer's doing downtown. It's more people can live here. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, all that, every little bit helps. But also we need, Mohawk Valley's got an immigration relocation center where they on purpose invite people, and Giovanni hires a lot of them, something like 27 trailblazers there, you know, to get, but they found, they couldn't find a better work if they found it. So unless we find a source of help for any, and we need everything from a car wash to a brain surgeon. I mean, it isn't just high level, it isn't just entry level. You know, we need a broad cross section of people, you know, who can help us do it. And I don't know how deep we get into it, but right now, I agree with you. There's no vision. We're looking for a visionary school superintendent. We got a real good custodian, keeps it all clean and nice and neat. And we live through one day and we try to do a good job tomorrow, but nobody has a vision.
Well, and what I've realized is that I'm not complaining but the county energy task force, there's a prime example. That was created to look at resolving an issue. What are we going to do? That's been 2 years now, and nothing has really transpired.
That was group therapy. That's okay.
There's actually a tremendous amount of information that's been developed, but I think COVID had really really created issues for that, because I was on one of the committees and we were meeting regularly, and then we had to go to Zoom, and so I think they have most of the information they need to put a final report together. We just got a month ago, our subcommittee preliminary feedback from one of the consultants, and we had many corrections that we had to send back to them saying, that's not what our report said. And by the way, well, what about the information that we provided? So it's still a work in progress, but I have no idea what the end game is here on a timeline.
I think there's an end date or anything, it's just kind
It's floating right now. So
And I understand that because we had the same issue here with COVID. And it was just like, well, thanks. How do we do stuff like, well, then all of a sudden we started doing the micro, started doing the emergency grants, we started, but this pandemic can be around for another 5 years. We've got to face it and just move ahead with growing our lives.
actually, my point is, even though I'm on one of the committees, that, Richfield Springs, rail yards, we're doing what we're doing regardless of whether that report comes out. That's just where we are, as far as I'm concerned. And right now, you have some of the key people involved in that report that are basically out there now doing presentations saying that the Governor Cuomo's energy plan is absolutely a bust. It can't happen technology-wise. The technology does not support his plan. It's a mess. So I think we just do what we're going to do, and if that plan comes to fruition, great. Otherwise, we have to move forward.
Well, if it came to first one would bankrupt us, so I hope it doesn't. Economic dreamers, wishes were horses, beggars would right. So
It can't
wish it happened. It doesn't work.
So yesterday I spent all day in Pennsylvania. Got up early, went down, came back. Every manufacturer, every service center, every business owner I had a word hiring. So
yeah,
there are trucking companies that you've got US Foods and Cisco. Cisco's sitting people in their cars outside of US Foods depots. They're following truck drivers to their first drop off. They're getting out and offering them $15,000 in signing bonus to come to work for Cisco. Because that's where we're at. That's the rest of the United States. That's everywhere. We're talking about these microcosm challenges here, but I'd like to know everybody's thoughts about how do we really attack that problem here? Because we've had businesses close here now because they can't hire enough staff to open the doors.
We are having like the exact opposite experience than here. We could not handle all the applicants we're getting for jobs. We are at this year alone.
Tell us what your secret is.
I don't know. Almost 3,000 applicants for, essentially 50 jobs.
But that's because you work in a field where people have to go to college and have an education.
You don't have to. I mean, our entry level positions are customer service positions. You don't have to have college. I don't know. It's bizarre for me because I know this is happening. But like when I look at our numbers and I look at our recruitment, I look at our acceptance rate and our retention, like.
That's a great question. You let them all work from home.
Currently, but that's not going to be permanent. So they knew that when they accept the job. So right now.
The pundits said that it's going to be a certain percentage of your workforce forever. It's going to work from home. That's what they're saying about all of us.
We've already clearly communicated that's not going to happen for us. Will we lose some people when we finally go? Absolutely. We have a risk kind of bucket we've already identified. But honestly, right now filling it is.
So you're an anomaly because.
I know. I'm not looking at it.
Good for you.
Let me say, I've been finding people, but I'm just always looking for, I just can't find enough people. One other thing that I would point out that happened yesterday was I interviewed a guy, 22-year Air Force veteran. He showed us, he was in Idaho for a while. I said, man, Idaho's beautiful. He said, we almost retired there. It's beautiful. He grew up in city center, but the water crisis made us decide to move home. We have such a stinking asset in an abundance of clean, fresh water.
Yeah, I drove.
We don't talk about, yeah. But I mean, we're talking about out west where, it's dry. There's no, you can just, if you can get water. So I mean, we're not without advantages.
Yeah.
To build on what Jeff said, Bloomberg has a great article on the Valvo plant, Pennsylvania. and their supply lines. And this is their heavy equipment plant. And they're getting stuff throughout the United States. They're bringing in diesel engines from Germany, and they talked about the trucking issues that they have, where they need to get all these things together. Nobody has things sitting on shelves right now.
Zero inventory.
Right. And how, they shut the line down for 4 hours because they're waiting for a specific shipment of certain parts. It's unbelievable and it's complicated. And it is a giant problem all across the country right now.
And the frustrating part is entrepreneurs, business owners want to move forward. We have hundreds of millions of dollars of requests in our pipelines for financing. And it's pushed out so far because I need these trucks, I need this equipment, I need it. And it's 6 months down the road. We can't fund it now. We'd love to be able to fund it now, but it's pushed out. And it's from everybody's supply. It's from supply chain to transportation to the, microchips to refrigerators.
Scotty Clark's at Hofstra University athletic field turn up and then turns backward. Uh-oh. It's like everything in the world is backward.
One of the things that Bloomberg pointed out,
Tomorrow it's been backward.
I don't want to belabor the point, but they talked about the aging of the American population and how many people born between 1946 and 1964, many of them truck drivers. And that's where they're at. That's one of the 3 issues that they identified, but it's a problem.
Yeah, it is.
So to focus in, I'll tell you from my perspective, high level, Jody, this is very lofty. And I might recommend, right, as you look at, to me, these are more strategies that you're going after. And I just wonder, I'll just put, something I've done in the past too, is doing more kind of a gap analysis of understanding for each of these different strategies, what's our current state, what's the desired state, what numbers are we using so we can see the measurements and the metrics that you're using to understand, are we making and moving the needle here? What's our contribution and role to that? And then what's our specific goal for 2022 to move that needle to get to that desired state? Yeah.
Secondly, in trying to set that up, what alliances can we make or strengthen to get more people to come along with a shared vision of how to get them? Because obviously you and Megan probably can't make everything work.
Well, I think you get to kind of like our contribution goal, and that might be
also
right.
Part of it is
Partnering
there needs to be the Pied Piper who draws everybody together.
Yeah.
But who else will work, can and will work with us? It goes aside.
And that's going to be my goal over the next 2 months.
And I would say, raise my hand and say this, to me, leadership is a big part of it. And if Dave Bliss or somebody in leadership in the county were to be part of the group that's trying to move it, I think it gives you more credibility in their own, and their tentacles reach other places. And if we need all that to get it started, I think, it's gotta, you saying it, it's okay, and that will make a difference. But I think if you share the vision and when you go to the county board, sell it to them, you could make major.
Well, on the county side, there's a couple of things. We're gonna hire a county admin. That's a done deal. I think we'll appoint, that person will be appointed in September. Knowing the process we're carrying out and the dates that we've outlined. So, and the applicants that we have. So, the county structure from that standpoint is going to change. And then, the county does, there's a strategic prioritization plan that the county paid for, that was created back in 2015 and finalized in 2016. And that document is, of limited use and value. So I'm chairing the, we call it Technology and Strategic Planning Committee. And I literally have been going through every single committee and making committee, I'm just calling them strategic, committee work plans. So we have these work plans for every single committee. And so they are kind of those strategic priorities that, we're very siloed. That's the nature of the county itself and the way it's structured. But these strategic liability.
Siloed, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's, I think it goes back to the actual the structure of how the county you know,
Yeah, it
14,
could be, yeah.
14 representatives that are managing, who are not there full time, who are managing direct department heads. I mean, that's why at the end of the day, you know, the county administrator, the whole idea here is to create a more centralized point of contact, because I mean, I can tell you the chair in terms of Dave, I mean, he's just plugging that kind of administrative hole.
It's a huge load.
And again, just to getting into the shortcomings of the county, he's never come to one of the technology and strategic planning committees. I mean, no one has the bandwidth to do any of this stuff.
300%.
So, you know, so at the end of the day, does the county itself, I think there's been kind of visioning discussions in the past, but I think it's been watered down, and it's definitely not clear and concise. I mean, I think the best information about priorities for the county is coming out of these work plans right now, but no one has the capacity to do anything with them beyond each of those committees. And that's where the administrator hopefully connects the dots and actually can take those committee work plans and, you know, and really try to move some very priority projects forward. So, I mean, I think the county, in my opinion, you know, to what Jody was saying, I think under the prior administration, you know, when I joined the board in 2016, there's no way the county would ever have, well, I mean, it's completely changed. The county wasn't even working with the idea in the way it is now. So a lot has changed. Yeah, we're making progress.
And anything that I say that's different doesn't mean we're not gotten better. Yeah.
No, we made significant progress. Yeah.
Where we get to and who, I think what you've got here on your list, that's great. I would say building a consensus amongst leaders around the county, you know, who can be our allies in what parts of it. That's where we get some synergy, maybe some energy.
And that's where I said we lost the year last year down COVID. That's
right.
My real goal right now is to try to meet with as many organizations and bring them onto the same table.
If you get number one done,
Absolutely.
you've accomplished a tremendous amount. I think you just circle number one.
Like, this is very lofty, right, in the grand scheme of things. And I don't want to say that we should be siloed or we shouldn't be reaching out to organizations, but just keep in mind, I think that's where our frustrations constantly come into play, right? The minute you start engaging others to partake and or relying on others is when this energy committee is a perfect example of that, right? So, I mean, for me, when I'm looking at this, I'm not shortchanging the value of partnerships and reaching out, but when I look at from your role, I want to know what we're doing that's in our control that's going to move the needle.
Well, and could we say that what percentage of your time and energy, is this a 20%, 10% of, because we still have all the other work to do? That you're, you know, that.
Well, I mean, like, hopefully when you look at though, right, again, grants aside, right, we've got 2 project charters going. Rail yards is relatively in a kind of holding pattern with marketing and obviously the energy side of things, but I mean, there's opportunity, I think, to say, is this, right, depending on what you come out with your goals, you can have a project that potentially comes out of one of these high level goals. And that's what's all going to stay realistic in terms of what your capabilities and capacity is when you're looking at these goals. So that's, to me, when I look at 7 goals alone, I can tell you, I can say that right now. Right? Like, I don't even know anything more about them, and I know you guys have. So, you know, I think it's starting down the list and understanding the problem is you get a lot of chicken and egg, right? It's where do you start and where do you put your time and energy the most to get the ball rolling? But I just word of caution is when you're looking at goals, making sure that these are the things that we can control, that we're leading, that we can make a difference.
With some positive movement though. Yes, that's been obviously accomplished.
Right.
It does make sense to build a consensus of all the stakeholders and all come to the same vision of what needs to be done. To get everybody looking and working in the same direction, but that's why I say it's such a big challenge.
Well,
but so can you get to the vision, because you know, we can sit here and bang our head on the wall all day long.
Our own orbits, and I'm a terrible artist, but there's a point in here where we have a we all have what we're doing, but in the middle of all of our orbits, there's something that we all can agree on. We're not asked to change all of our priorities in our business and everything else we're doing, but with the county government, can they agree to this part and business agree to this part and industry and government help here, you know, so there's,
I think that's a 5-year process in and of itself. if you want.
It's a culture change within the county, but that's all you get. You're not gonna get any, we're not gonna agree 100%.
Right.
What can become a consensus that we're
Just point everybody at power.
Sure.
Well, if everybody was focused and all spending energy on power, how much would that help us?
I think I mean, but at the end of the day, I mean, the idea, the idea is a 2-person operation. And I just want to point out that, that like the nonprofit community, and again, I'm just saying that from my perspective, like the arts, like there's no way the IDA can take on the arts. I mean, I mean, it can be support on the economic side, but.
When I used to interview staff, I used to ask, how good are you getting other people to do your job?
Right, a connecting point.
And I'm not saying that we're gonna get involved with the arts, but we should have discussions with people that are involved with the arts on what do they need to improve.
Yeah, I completely get a partner in the process, but the point being that, it's hard, to I think we just need to be careful how we position the IDA, because I think some people would interpret some of these discussions as taking something away from other people. The turf piece comes
We're
into
just want to
play.
help. We're just-
So, no, I'm just saying,
We're not
it's,
catalysts. We're not in control. We just want to have.
So I
Right.
think we're in agreement that this is good. We need to refine it. I just want, I know everybody has to go. I just want to, this partner thing, I want to, is a perfect segue into a meeting that took place with regard to downtown that Jeff attended. Did you attend that meeting also?
No.
It really is about the Market Street area and bringing in somebody to be in charge of that whole development. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Are we all aware of that meeting?
No.
Can you fill everybody in on that meeting? Because it doesn't feel like a partnership to me. However, we want to work cooperatively with whatever's going on.
Who is
Who's gonna be
working
on the city?
Why don't you explain it, Joe?
Well, the mayor contracted with Delaware Engineering to look at how to revitalize Market Street. Because
You
there's a
mean
lot
the
of-
same thing we did 10 years ago with Delaware Engineering?
That's the one.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a twist on this.
There's a new fee.
Yes, we're just gonna like recycle the material and get more money. It's
And they identified a number of properties that they want to redevelop, such as the building they're tearing down.
Ford building.
Yeah,
Ford.
Ford building, Stella Luna.
So, no.
It's vacant lot.
The highway, the garage that's there.
Jake Gunther's property that he took over from Betty Olds between Selden and Foothills.
Yeah.
Right.
Where the farmers market is.
So they identified all that. They asked a number of stakeholders to be involved in it. They included Jeff, and he went to the May 1st meeting, which was Monday. And the person who Delaware Engineering is using for this is Sandy. And he's bringing in 120 developers.
All right, I can self out.
And the report is supposed to be pretty ambitious.
I'm joking.
Okay, none self out. Next.
So, and Jim Seward is one of the attendees too. It's sort of the good old boys.
Well, hey, hope they get the help.
Did the city actually, so the city owns now the Ford building?
The city,
Did they, I mean, we hadn't updated, they were in kind of the financing contract negotiations, they wanted us to buy it,
Nope, they're progressing on demolition.
so it's in there.
no, and I wish them well. I hope
Yeah.
they do.
Oh, that's.
Yeah.
But that's,
I have a housing follow-up question. Most of you are aware I have a project in Cooperstown.
Seems like I've heard.
Does that project, my involvement aside, would that project qualify for a pilot under the new? I know that back
I thought it was.
when I was kind of working through that, housing was not involved in the IDA at all, and so it's kind of been moving along.
what has, housing is considered a retail operation. And as a retail operation, IDAs usually don't get involved unless you can demonstrate that there's a need for it.
There is.
Not apparently enough, given the level. No.
Joe Scott and I had a big argument with Springbrook. She said, there's no way you can do it. There's basically 3 sections of the law that says you can look at you have to meet 2 criteria: unemployment rates and people on public assistance in that area that qualify. It's way below the state average. If it's in and empire zones, well, I haven't had empire zones in 15 years. And then the third is if you can demonstrate a local shortage of that type of service or retail.
You have to do 2 out of 3 of those?
One.
So
we went around and around with Springbrook because Joe said, I can't figure out a way of proving this. And so Michael Mandola from MRB, who was working with Springbrook, actually developed a letter explaining why there was a critical loss of lack of housing in downtown. We used that as the basis for approving Springbrook. So it can be done. It's just that Joe is a very conservative and cautious attorney, which is very helpful for an IDA. And he will play the devil's advocate that the state controller is going to jump all over you unless you nail this down. So we can do housing, but we have to be very consistent and careful on how we do it.
if a municipality had a comprehensive plan that identifies
That would be
the
perfect.
housing crisis.
Which,
So I'm
which is
thinking,
in the.
which Cooperstown does have.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm thinking that was kind of interesting, that project, but the bigger question is, on your number 2, looking at housing is I think we need to figure out a way where we can help housing. I think Springbrook is great, and I'm really glad we're doing that.
Right.
Because it's right now, in Otsego County, we don't have a shortage of jobs. We have a shortage of workers.
Correct.
So creating more jobs isn't really our.
We're trying to make things that are scarce more scarce.
Yeah, and so it seems like housing, the workers, I don't know, hopefully that'll change in the coming years for
You
some
hit
of us.
the nail on the head. I'm working with IOXs and they're looking to do an expansion, bringing in new equipment so they can justify to their parent company that they need to stay here. They're talking about, well, they'll create 30 jobs with this new machinery and equipment. And I'm like, but you've got a sign on your front lawn looking for people. I mean, what's the point of creating another 30 openings if we can't build?
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm honestly, when I'm looking at this, what's the linear order that we're going after? So that we're not going in 10 directions at once. And what are we trying, is housing the first, is infrastructure the first thing on our list, right? Is housing the first, what are we going after? What's the
It's
order
number
that we
1.
have to
What's the
work
vision? What do you have to do? You have to get right.
Exactly. This is the first year that we have not applied for CFA applications because of that issue. I want to say, let's retrench, let's figure out where we're going. We can certainly get other grants, stuff like that, but that's not what our mission is. That we really, my focus this year is where's this county going? Where's the IDA going? And what is our revised mission? Because every IDA, I've been looking at this for the last 2 months, every IDA webpage on their mission statement is the same. And it's like IDAs, and this board told me this 2 years ago, we want to be more than an IDA. That we just don't want to be a financing mechanism. We want to be a driving force.
Well, let me say it this way, in the absence of anybody else doing it, we feel we need to do it. It isn't like,
I agree.
there's a vacuum where some vision and a push toward the vision should exist, and since nobody else is doing it, and we do have the advantage of financing and a few other things that may help make it happen, that to me, it's not the primary. It wouldn't be, if somebody else is doing it, I wouldn't care if we've got it, we just help. But we're not, nobody's making it happen.
The biggest change that has happened in the last year is the Chamber of Commerce is really, they're focusing on site-specific economic development and overall.
To me, this whole thing really, a different way of looking at it from you and Lou, I realize you have an incredible amount of this, sometimes in opportunities, we're sparring, we're looking for a weakness. I've always seen, what can I get to move this year? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to do this in this order, except for this is a roadblock, but I can make some headway here. So it's more bronc ride than dressage. We don't tell a horse where to go, we're trying to stay on. So the opportunity will present itself. We jab at ways, and when there's somebody can work with us on something, or you can get some gain, then that's where we put some focus. But I also agree, we have to look moving forward before we're very long about increasing our staff, our capacity. You're one person, you guys are two people, you can only do what two people can do,
I agree. And Jeff made this point to me a couple of years ago, is one of my missions. My task is, I'm supposed to raise revenue. And that's why it's been a big push this year for finance, trying to bring in additional revenues into the agency. But we've got to build our fund balance enough that we can support finance.
Once again, not right away, but the agreed upon vision.
It is in my mind. I'd like to hire, to be honest, I think 2 people. That would really help this agency move into a real leadership direction that we'd have the capacity to be able to do.
So that I would say would be all part of that shared vision, like it's understanding again, once you have a shared vision, the organization for action becomes, here are the things we're doing, here's the priority order, and then here's revenue sources, expenses, and staffing needs.
Sounds like we're gonna revisit this.
I just, one thing, just not to lose track of just that this housing project, not, the Cooperstown.
I promised the people involved that I wouldn't talk about it.
So do we got two?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't want to bring that other one back up. I'm
Talking Chestnut Crossing? My project?
Yes, just more broadly, because that project is
Different
moved along.
meeting.
It has village approval, and it definitely,
One more to go.
So the only reason I would just want to go back to that is that, I totally in support of the Springbrook project, and that's going to have a tremendous impact. But I think the longer, the more opportunity is with smaller projects. And I think we need to figure out how to be more supportive on the pilot side for those 10 units.
So I talked to Joey, it's been a month and a half or 2 months, when we first started talking about a housing pilot, and he came up with this draft in the matrix. And my call to him was, this is great, but it has to be more market specific. We can't all meet a $10 million or $20 million task.
Yeah.
We have to drive it down to what do our smaller markets, it might mean 6 units or 10 units.
I agree. I mean, I have a 7, a 5. I mean, to build what Springbrook, that's 1 in a million, but more along the lines of, Josh's project or other development opportunities, 6 units, maybe not the best numbers behind that, but how can we better support those smaller?
And I think that goes back to also marketing too, right? Because making so, again, from a visionary standpoint and plan of action, housing is kind of first on our list. Now it's putting all your ducks in a row. It's
I think
now we have to be attractive, and then we have to start get out there and let people know
about a positive project impact. If we could partner around a current project in Cooperstown and help it make it happen, then it attracts more opportunity, more interest.
But we have to be cognizant, because we're economic development. We're trying to support whether it's workforce that we have that needs housing or new workforce. We can't fall into the trap of supporting every small project that turns into rentals for baseball camps or student rentals.
Right.
Or we can't fall into that trap.
Focus, an actual focus on year-round housing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it ought to be designed in a way that if it does turn to that, then benefits become a problem.
I agree.
Let me say, the marketplace is such to me that it'll discipline itself. There's X number of students in town. When they all have a place to sleep and you build 100 more units, somebody else has to live in them other than the student.
Right.
So once again, yes, we should be careful, but it isn't like somebody, if you build 5,000 student apartments and you have 4,000 students, you have to find somebody else. So to me, it's a lack of availability.
Well, yeah, but under the premise of I'm building workforce,
I agree with what you're
get
saying,
benefits.
but you as an investor, you better have a better plan, because they're sure there's only so many students.
So you got to be the right principal, right? You got to have.
And PS,
Students are no longer in the loop.
if you,
They're on, they're all
if you come from Sri Lanka, some of the broken down
Well,
houses,
that,
there's 70 vacant houses in Olean or something like that. You know, if you're coming from Albania, somebody fix one of them up, it might be a great place to live.
Right.
You could body and think you just died and went to heaven. You know, I mean, so it's compared to what? So I think the opportunities are going to be there for us. If there is a group in town, I'm told, that's working on some invitations and things like that. So, you know, there's a lot of things moving and, you know, that's why we can talk to enough people. So maybe things come together at the right times. To one complements the other. And we have.
I see a Pines guy develop.
You just wants to come put up a little bird right there, I'm all game. So strategy or goal one is where I think the focus is for you the rest of this year, and I would say even into probably 2022. But I don't know from this body, and that's probably more the governance body in terms of your goals, right? Is are we putting some numbers and some dates to the stuff that we want to maybe discuss the next meeting?
I'm with Jeff on the vision's got to be where you start.
Well, yeah, I'm saying like, so are we looking for a vision by, we're in August already, right? Are we looking at by, right? That's what, I wasn't gonna say that, I'm like, we're already in August, maybe that's a little unrealistic.
You were so time conscious. You got to relax. Let the end come to you a little bit. Come on.
Hey, she's I was on Route 7 the other day and pulled in the Pines guy and waved to people that were running. They didn't see me because they were both looking at their watches, so I'm like.
Checking their heart rate as they're
You
running.
went back down to New Holland, didn't you?
I did. I turned around there so I could go back.
Anyway, very last, just to let everyone know, that on October 6th and 7th, there is, they're calling the Mohawk Valley Brownfield Development Summit. That will involve, our 6 counties in Columbus. It's being held in Johnstown. 2 of the sites that are on the screen in our county, one is the only in the rail yards for future development, and the other is a county highway. Being highlighted.
Wait a minute, the one by the Cooperstown School?
yeah, we're, I mean,
Is that the one?
someday we will finally build a new highway garage building. I mean, with BOCES, it is moving ahead.
But that's the done by this brownfield or the.
That has a fuel,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I think it would meet, it's a garage, you know, I mean.
For a long time.
Yeah,
So that's
and the actual
It's the
tanks
long
are
time.
buried there, or I think they're above ground.
What happened 50 and 60 years ago?
This next week.
Yeah. But it would be
Send that out
it'd be
to
a prime spot for
Can you
housing
send that out
in
to us?
Cooperstown.
Yeah, I can send something.
Great.
I just missed their meeting today. Their meetings are always every second Thursday at 9:00. So most of the meetings I missed, they've been yelling at me.
I have no problem if we move it to the 1st or the 3rd. I mean, if it makes.
No.
He didn't really want to go.
But they're pressuring, I'm trying to get Megan considered going to the conference, close to me. We'll see.
Any good entrepreneur helps us deputizing somebody else to a lot of.
Is this a funding based potential or is this just information?
It's, what they're trying to do is get a minimum of 100 developers to come to this conference and look at the sites that are in our area. Most of the counties submitted 3 sites, we only submitted 2.
Let me ask you something, Jody. In the rail yards, you go down by Trefison's to the left where the old roundhouse was, the bottom of Chinese Wall. Is there any, I presume the railroad still owns that. It's probably more polluted than what we currently own. Is it possible for that to become something someday?
Yes.
That part's not small. I mean, it's a fair amount of real estate.
Yeah, that doesn't have a lot of picture. But anyway.
All right.
Let people know.
I'll make a motion.
I'll take the second.
Yeah, I'll email you and I can send you an example of some of the gap analysis we've done just to give you an idea of how we've kind of looked at some things.